Have you ever had one of those moments where you do something and think, why on earth did I just do that? Like there's some hidden force pulling your strings. Well, believe it or not, over 100 years ago, a doctor in Vienna came up with this really radical, kind of unsettling idea that we are not the masters of our own minds. His name was Sigmund Freud, and he didn't just toss that idea out there. He drew a map of our inner world, a blueprint that pretty much changed how we think about ourselves forever.
And this is where the story gets really fascinating. You see, Freud never wanted to be a psychiatrist, not at all. He was this incredibly ambitious medical student, and what he really wanted was to make a huge scientific discovery that would make him famous. His own life was, well, it was a mess of conflict. And in this amazing act of intellectual bravery, he started analyzing himself, using his own dreams to figure out what was driving him. And it was out of these really personal, intense struggles that he built his world-changing theories.
Freud thought of himself as an archaeologist, but of the mind. He had this powerful idea that our present is basically built on the ruins of our past. So the whole point of his new science, which he called psychoanalysis, was to dig through all the layers of our psyche, to unearth these buried memories and forgotten conflicts, these hidden cities inside us that are secretly running the show.
Okay, so where do we even begin to dig? Well, Freud gave us a really powerful metaphor for our minds, an iceberg. And the whole point of an iceberg is that the biggest, most powerful, and frankly, most dangerous part is the part you can't see, hidden deep beneath the surface.
So think about what you're doing this very second. You're watching this, you're hearing my voice, maybe you're thinking about what I'm saying. That's your conscious mind. It's just the tip of the iceberg, the tiny little fraction of your mental world that you can actually see and feel in control of. It's what we usually think of as me. But for Freud, this was actually the least important part.
But what about, say, the name of your third-grade teacher? You weren't thinking about it a second ago, but if you try, you can probably pull that name up pretty easily, right? Well, where did that come from? That memory just emerged from your preconscious. Think of it like a giant storage room right below the surface, holding everything you could be thinking about, just waiting to be called up into the light.
And then there's the giant, the massive, dark, underwater bulk of the iceberg. This is the unconscious. And it is a wild, turbulent place filled with our primal instincts, our buried traumas, our forbidden desires. You can't see it. You can't just access it. But according to Freud, this is the true engine of our personality. It's down there in the dark, driving almost everything we think and do.
And when you actually see it laid out like this, it's pretty staggering. The conscious mind, our reality, what we're aware of, is maybe 3% of the whole picture. The huge majority of who we really are, our deepest fears, our hidden motivations, it's all happening completely outside of our awareness. It's a pretty humbling thought, isn't it?
So if the iceberg is the stage, then who are the actors? Freud said our mind isn't just one thing. It's more like a chaotic, never-ending play going on inside our heads, starring three very different characters. Let's meet the cast, shall we? First, you've got the id, who is basically an impulsive child, running on the pleasure principle. Then there's the ego, the realistic mediator, trying to deal with the reality principle. And finally, you have the superego, the strict inner judge, who is always pushing for perfection. And this inner battle between them? Well, that's pretty much the story of our lives.
Okay, first up is the id. This is the oldest, most primitive part of you. It's pure, raw instinct. We're all born with it. The id is totally unconscious, and it has only one rule, the pleasure principle. It wants what it wants, and it wants it right now. There's no logic, no morality, just this relentless, screaming drive to get its needs met.
Freud himself had the most vivid description for it. He called the id a chaos, a cauldron full of seething excitations. Just imagine that, this raw, untamed energy, the source of all our psychic power, just constantly bubbling up and demanding to be let out.
So, who has to deal with this cauldron of chaos? That's the ego's job. The ego is the part of you that develops to try and mediate between the totally unrealistic id and the actual real world. It runs on the reality principle, which means it tries to get the id what it wants, but in a way that's safe and won't get you arrested or fired. Freud called the ego a poor creature because it's constantly stressed out trying to serve three impossible masters at once.
And Freud had this brilliant metaphor for it. He said the ego is like a rider on a horse, and the horse, that's the id. Powerful, strong, full of energy. Now the rider's job is to steer the horse, but let's be honest, the horse has all the power. And a lot of the time, the rider is just forced to guide the horse where it was already planning on going, all while pretending it was their idea in the first place.
And what about that third master? Well, that's the superego. This is our inner critic, our moral conscience. It's the voice of every you should and you shouldn't that we've ever absorbed from our parents and society. The superego wants perfection, and when the ego messes up, or even just thinks about messing up, the superego punishes it. With what? Guilt, shame. Sometimes it can be even more cruel than the impulsive id.
Okay, so we've got the map of the mind and we've met the characters in the play. But what powers this entire system? What's the fuel for this endless internal drama? For Freud, it all came down to two basic primal instincts.
Everything we are, everything we want, everything we do, it's all an expression of this massive epic battle between two opposing forces that live inside every single one of us. This is the deepest part of the map. This is what makes the whole thing run.
So on one side, you have Eros, the life instinct. Now this isn't just about sex, not in the way we usually think about it. It's the drive for survival, for pleasure, for creativity, for connection. It's the force that builds things up and brings us together. And on the other side, you have its opposite, Thanatos, the death instinct. This is the darker drive towards aggression, destruction, conflict, and ultimately a return to the quiet of non-existence. Our entire lives are just a constant negotiation between these two massive forces.
So, after all of this, what's the takeaway? Are we just helpless puppets in some dark unconscious play? Well, not exactly. The whole point of Freud drawing this map wasn't to tell us we're doomed. It was to give us a path towards becoming more self-aware, and maybe even a little more in control.
But first, we have to start with this crucial and, pretty unsettling insight. We are not in charge. Our conscious ego likes to think it's the one calling the shots, but the truth is it's constantly being pushed around by the demands of the id, the harsh judgments of the superego, and the facts of reality. And that, right there, is the fundamental human problem we all face.
But Freud also gave us a kind of formula for hope. He famously said that the goal is this: where id was, there ego shall be. And what that means is that the goal isn't to fight a war with our own conscious, but to understand it. It's a call to shrink the parts of ourselves that are ruled by darkness and impulse, and to expand the territory of our conscious, thoughtful awareness, to shine a light into the shadows.
Which brings us right back to that wild horse. You can't get rid of the horse. You can't kill the id. That's where all your energy, all your passion, all your life force comes from. To get rid of it would be to become a lifeless robot. No, the goal is to become a better, more skillful rider. By understanding the horse's nature, by knowing its power and its tendencies, the ego, the rider, stands a much better chance of actually steering it instead of just being taken for a terrifying ride.
So in the end, Freud's really complex, really deep map of the mind leaves us all with a very practical, very personal challenge. The goal isn't to crush our inner world into submission or achieve some perfect conflict-free life. The goal is the lifelong work of getting to know ourselves, especially the parts we don't like. So the question isn't whether or not you have a wild horse inside you, because we all do. The real question is, how well are you riding yours?